Urban legends. We know them as fragments of fear, frightening tales of unknown figures lurking in shadows. They're the kind of stories that come with warnings. Don't walk alone at night. Don't talk to strangers. Beware of things that seem harmless, because they might not be. These stories live on because they tap into our deepest instincts, telling us that danger might be closer than we think. Sometimes we brush off these legends as just fiction, telling ourselves that these things don't really happen. But once in a while, an urban legend breaks free from the chains of folklore. Once in a while, the myth turns out to be true. And that's exactly what happened on Staten Island. What began as a ghost story about a monster named Cropsey became something far more real, a nightmare come to life. So tonight, we delve into the haunting truth of Cropsey, an urban legend that stopped being just a story. If Cropsey could be real, what other urban legends might be waiting just beneath the surface? Could there be more monsters hiding in plain sight? The story of Cropsey was passed around Staten Island for decades. The kids told each other the same warning: don't go too close to the woods and never get near the abandoned Willowbrook State School. Cropsey was out there, waiting, lurking. The details of the legend varied. Some said Cropsey was an escaped patient from a mental asylum. Others claimed he was an old caretaker gone mad. He had become something of a shapeshifter in the imaginations of children. Some said he carried an axe. Others swore he had a hook for a hand. But the most terrifying part of the story was always the same. Cropsey took children. Parents used the tale to scare their kids into staying safe. But the warnings became more than just bedtime stories. People whispered that strange things really happened near Willowbrook. Kids spoke in hushed voices about classmates who vanished and never came back. Everyone dismissed it as urban myth, until children truly started disappearing. Willowbrook State School wasn't just the setting for a spooky legend. It was real, and it was horrifying. Built to house children with developmental disabilities, the institution was supposed to offer care. Instead, it became a symbol of neglect and abuse. Children were left in squalor without proper food, medical attention, or supervision. When Willowbrook finally shut down in the 1980s, it left behind a crumbling, decaying shell, a place filled with dark memories and ghostly rumors. It was the perfect place for a monster to hide, or for one to be born. In 1972, the first disappearance struck Staten Island like a thunderclap. 5-year-old Alice Pereira vanished while playing near her apartment. No one saw or heard anything. No one knew where she'd gone. Some said Cropsey had taken her, but that was just a story, wasn't it? Years passed, and the community tried to move on. But then it happened again. Holly Ann Hughes, 7 years old, disappeared in 1981. She was on her way to buy a bar of soap with some pocket change. Witnesses said they saw her with a strange man, someone she didn't know. That would be the last time anyone saw Holly alive. And it wasn't just Holly. In 1983, Tia Hayes Jackson disappeared. In 1984, it was Hank Gafforio, a mentally challenged man with the mind of a child. In each case, the pattern was hauntingly similar. Kids vanished without a trace, leaving behind only devastated families and unanswered questions. Authorities searched tirelessly. Posters of missing children appeared on every street corner, but no bodies were found. The only thing the community had was the unsettling sense that someone or something was preying on their children. And just like that, the old story of Cropsey stopped being just a ghost tale. People began to wonder, was there something behind the legend? As fear gripped the island, people whispered that perhaps the old myth had never been a myth at all. What if Cropsey was real? And what if he was still out there? The truth began to unravel in the most chilling way. In 1987, police arrested Andre Rand, a former janitor at Willowbrook State School. Rand had lived on Staten Island for years, often seen wandering the woods near the abandoned school. But Rand wasn't just an ordinary drifter, he had a disturbing past. Rand's history was filled with troubling incidents, arrests for kidnapping, inappropriate behavior with children, and connections to unsettling crimes. When the authorities brought him in for questioning, the pieces began to fall into place. The investigation revealed that Rand had a bizarre fixation on children. Witnesses recalled seeing him loitering near the very locations where the missing kids were last seen. He offered rides to children, befriended the vulnerable, and stayed hidden in the shadows. In 1987, the search for 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger, a child with Down syndrome, led to a breakthrough. After weeks of scouring the island, searchers discovered her remains in a shallow grave near one of Rand's makeshift campsites. The evidence was overwhelming. Rand was charged with her kidnapping, but many believe he was responsible for the other disappearances as well. The community wanted closure. They wanted to know what happened to their children. But many of the missing kids were never found. And Rand, though convicted of Jennifer's kidnapping, refused to confess. To this day, the fates of Alice, Holly, and the others remain unknown, lost in the shadows of time. Rand was sentenced to prison, but the legend of Cropsey lives on. For some, the story is now intertwined with Rand's horrific deeds. But others believe that even though Rand was caught, the real Cropsey is still out there, waiting. If the legend of Cropsey could come true, what other stories might be waiting to become reality? Consider the Hookman, the tale of a crazed maniac with a hook for a hand. The story seems absurd, but similar incidents of escaped convicts and highway killers have been documented. Could this legend be rooted in an actual event? Then there's the terrifying legend of the Slender Man. What began as an internet meme turned into a real-life nightmare when two young girls in Wisconsin attempted to murder their friend, believing they were serving the mythical figure. When stories blur the line between myth and reality, they can take on a life of their own. And let's not forget the Black-Eyed Children, figures that knock on doors late at night, asking to be let in. Are they just kids in costumes, or something far more sinister? These legends teach us something crucial. The things we fear most often have a kernel of truth. And sometimes, the monsters we imagine are real, just not in the way we expect. What makes urban legends so powerful is their ability to reflect our deepest fears. But what happens when we ignore those fears, when we dismiss them as just stories? The people of Staten Island thought they were safe. They believed that Cropsey was just a figment of imagination. But they were wrong. And because they looked the other way, children were lost. Forever. So the next time you hear a strange story about a figure in the woods or a ghost in an old building, ask yourself, what if it isn't just a story? What if it's something real, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself? Because if Cropsey turned out to be true, what else might be lurking just out of sight? We tell these stories to keep ourselves safe, to impose order on a chaotic world. But in truth, the line between myth and reality is thinner than we think. Stay vigilant, stay aware, and always remember, if you think it's just a story, you might be the next chapter. Subscribe for more stories about mysteries, myths, and magic.